fathers would think that they need to just provide. I'm hoping fathers are going to be listening to the podcast will understand it's about presence. And being present means really showing interest and taking the time to be with the child. When I'm saying there's no formula, from my experience with 4 kids, is that there will be the standard things that, yeah, you must discipline a child, you must do this and do this. But every child has a different personality. They've got their unique thing. They are on their own journey. They've got their own space. So as a parent, sometimes you want to make a child do certain things, and maybe you want to use unorthodox methods, whatever, and the voice in you is telling you something else. You must listen to it. So if you're a leader, you must understand that there's a need for time to be quiet, a time to be silent, because that's when you draw from to be able, as they say, to fill your cup again, to be able to give and lead. The role of spirituality, I guess, in today's world is much more important because amid the noise, there's so much noise, there's so much information, and people don't need more of that. They need more wisdom. To date, I still wonder if my parents, by the time they died, they thought they had a life of significance, a life of meaning. Hello, I'm Dan Moyane. Welcome to Don't Die Unknown. Now, for many years, I just want to begin by telling you what has inspired the title of this podcast, Don't Die Unknown. Now, for many years, I've grown up with a quiet fear, which is the fear of dying unknown. And it began when I was still a little boy. I mean, I think I was about 10 years old or so. For some reason, I was wondering about how sad it would be for one to have been born, lived through this life, and died only having been known by your parents, your sister, your siblings, if you're lucky to have siblings, your neighbors in your neighborhood, and maybe your schoolmates, your classmates, and maybe a few friends you make along the way, and maybe later on in life, 1 or 2 colleagues who become friends with you. I thought there must be something more to life, to living, than just being known to a restricted circle of people. And that became sharper for me as a 10-year-old when the big news of the day was the landing of American astronauts on the moon. My father used to consume a lot of news. I grew up in a home where the radio was in the evening. Those days, you got the news on the radio at night. The 8 o'clock news, as it were. And the biggest story at the time was the American astronauts on the moon. And I used to look up at the moon, literally lying on the grass in the backyard of my parents' home in Soweto, and just looking up at the moon and wondering, those guys up there, now we know their names. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. These guys will be known forever into history. And what about me? Who will know me? I thought, nobody's going to know me. And I thought, okay, what does it actually mean? But I was only 10 years old, so I never delved deeper into what that meant. But over the years, this quiet fear of dying unknown grew and grew. Each time I moved along my journey of life, I realized later that it's not about being known just for the sake of it. It's die unknown not in the public sense, okay? Not because people don't recognize your face now and again when they see you or when they meet you. They don't know your name. Of course, you will go into places in life as you travel where you're not known. It's not about that, but unknown in a deeper sense. That's a realization I've come to over the years. Unknown even to myself, because sometimes we live our lives, we don't actually know ourselves. It might take something to happen in life for you to know yourself. Unknown to my purpose. Because the question for me is, how do you live a life that really matters? So it's about purpose. Unknown to the values that shape my life. And all of us in our journeys from when we were small, growing up, in the homes we grow up in, we are influenced in terms of values that shape our lives. As you will find out as we go along this journey of this podcast, I will share with you the kinds of values that were imbued in my very young life by my parents. And my parents never went to school. They were not educated in any way. So it's not like they understood, but they lived their lives in a certain way that was valuable to me, that I drew values from. And of course, unknown to the people I love. Because sometimes you may be with people that you care about, that you love, but they don't really know you. You know, many of us, especially guys, we are very scared. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to open ourselves to you. So over time, that fear that has been with me for a long time of not dying unknown became the title of my memoir, which I published in 2021. I don't want to die unknown. We need to listen to our inner voice. Somebody asked me recently, why did you write this book, really? I said, well, the title is I Don't Want to Die Unknown, but the book itself was inspired by more things of realizing about identity, your roots and stuff, because I came across a quotation by Chinua Achebe, and I opened my book with it. You'll get it right in the front, in the preface. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. What does that mean? If you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And when they do, it won't be an authentic story. So if you don't narrate your story yourself, the narrative that will come will be of other people. And the reason that stood out for me is because I've been in the media world for more than 40 years. And that's a public life. And I've covered people's stories, breaking news, live stories, and telling other people's stories, narrating other people's stories as a reporter. And having done that, I realized, especially around the pandemic, between 2020 and 2022 in the world, I realized that life is fleeting. I have a family. I've got 4 kids. And one day I might be blessed with grandchildren. That was a time. Yes, I do have a grandchild now. But at the time I'm thinking, what if one of those grandchildren in the future said to my daughter's mom or to my son's dad, tell us about this Mkulu, this grandpa. We hear these, that he was on radio, he was on television, but I read something else. I see there was a post on social media. They said something about him, but who was this guy? And then my daughters, their mothers then, and my sons, their fathers will have to scramble. I said, no, but he was this and this. But then I said to them, and I write about this in the book. I say at the end, at least they will know from the horse's mouth, so to speak, where I come from. The first chapters of the book are dedicated to my mother and my father. The book itself is dedicated to my parents. They never got education, but they shared a lot with us and my sister and I in terms of their lives, and we learned a lot from them. So that was really the reason that let us tell our stories. It's very important to tell your story. Why is storytelling important? Because it enables, among other things, to not die unknown. Because once you tell your story to 1 or 2 people and you live your life according to whatever values you've got, you are now impacting on other people's lives. Therefore, you will not die unknown. I've also realized, being interviewed about the book, for example, people asking me about what do you think is more important in life? And I've realized something important. Most of us, we're not really afraid of being unseen, okay? Because life is just like that. We are afraid of living without meaning. Just think about it for a while. What does your life actually mean? Not just to yourself, but to the people around you. Many people realize later in life that they've been living without alignment, and that can scare you because then you are not really living truly to your potential without becoming fully yourself. Most of fathers would think that they need to just provide. I'm hoping fathers who are going to be listening to the podcast will understand it's about presence. And being present means really showing interest and taking the time to be with the child. It's not about providing the material. Yes, they're important. If you can, it's very important. It was not until I was in matric that I got to know that my father did not go to school. Just one example. He was present in my life in the sense that every day he came back from work. He was a laborer working at an Afrikaans high school in Johannesburg. So he'd come back home late, but every day he would ask for my homework. He'll ask me, can I see your books? I'll have to give him the bag of the books, and my father would sit there and go through my books. Where he saw that there was a wrong or a mark, he'll want to know what happened here. So I thought he knew because he was interested. He was present. I mean, throughout, from not just from sub A, throughout the standards, until one day when I was in matric, and I think then I was in standard 9, which is grade 11 today, just in that final year. And he said to me, I showed him something, whatever I said. He said to me, sit down. I want to tell you something. I said, yeah. He said, I never went to school. So the stuff you're studying now is beyond me, but I was following you to make sure that you do your work. And I thought, wow. So if you are a father, just understand the impact of that. It gave me the value of the importance of education. My father instilled that in me. Himself, he never went to school. When I was taking part in the June 16, 1976 protest in Soweto that time, he told me very straight, he says, I understand the fight for equality in education, everything else, but you will get your matric, because in my family, and I'm the eldest, there's no one with any level of education. So presence is very important. So if you're a father and you are listening to this, you must understand that you're going to have an impact on your child by living a life that would have a legacy, the legacy being your presence in their lives, because it carries a lot of value in that. And you must be able to share with your child as well as a father what are the important things in life. I'm thinking about when you come to the parenting and the inner voice, there's no formula how to bring up a child. It's the psychologists who've written books about what's the best way to parent. And when I'm saying there's no formula, from my experience with 4 kids, is that there will be the standard things that, yeah, you must discipline a child, you must do this and do this. But every child has a different personality. They've got their unique thing. They are on their own journey. They've got their own space. So as a parent, sometimes you want to make a child do certain things, and maybe you want to use unorthodox methods, whatever, and the voice in you is telling you something else. You must listen to it. Other times you said, I'm not going to bother the child, but I'm thinking there is something wrong. Okay? I remember with me, with my eldest son, I'll say to my wife, I think there's something happening, but I'm not so sure. And they say, let's leave it, we'll see. And I bet you my bottom dollar, after a few days, we'll find out that there was something that was happening, because it will come out, okay? And simple examples like, has the homework been done? Unlike what my father used to do, to check my homework every day. Some days I wouldn't check the homework because my wife can maybe check the homework because I'm busy, I'm doing something. Then I realized later on I get a letter from the school to say, so-and-so is not doing his homework. I said, but my voice told me that maybe there's something wrong, and I didn't listen to it. So trust yourself, okay? And be there. So if you are a parent, there's no formula, and respect every child's journey. To say, no, they're on this journey, then how about it? Spirituality is not about religion, number one. We are all souls who are inhabiting bodies, who are here on a journey for purpose. And our purpose is to be significant. It's not about being famous, having celebrity status. There are many people who are so wealthy in this world, but they are very lonely. And some of them have spoken about it themselves. So if you're a leader, you must understand that there's a need for time to be quiet, a time to be silent, because that's when you draw from to be able, as they say, to fill your cup again, to be able to give and lead. The role of spirituality, I guess, in today's world is much more important, because amid the noise, there's so much noise, there's so much information, and people don't need more of that. They need more wisdom. And you can only gain wisdom as a leader that you can impart and impact on others if you give yourself the time and the space to meditate, to read something empowering, it's not about religion, as I've said, and to take time for yourself to be silent. There's a lot of power in silence, and silence, I've learned as a leader, teaches you to listen. In fact, the word silent and the word listen have got the same letters. They are just sitting in different places. The same number of letters are in listen as they are in silence. So I believe that if you're spiritual, you have a better understanding that you are not just this flesh and blood. You've got more that you can give. And the more you understand yourselves within, the better person you become, the better connection you can make. And a leader has to do that. Long before I started working in my life, I had the value of respect. was embedded in me by my father. My father was very clear. It doesn't matter who the person is, you show respect. You respect yourself and you respect others. And when I started working and I look at people who are managers and stuff, I always checked if there was respect or disrespect. And where there was disrespect, it affected me because I would not stand for it. It's so bad that for me, a value of respect has to exist even in places outside your own environment. If you're in a shopping center, you're shopping, there's a cashier and people who are working there, there's no need to disrespect them. I've actually even taught my kids that they have to greet anybody. You walk into a building, there's a lady who's serving coffee, who's cleaning the floors, whatever, they're a human being, show respect. So for me, that's been important. And people I've worked with, I've been fortunate. I've worked with people who have respected me because they respect themselves and respect others. Where there's been disrespect, I have spoken out against it. The other spirit is a generosity of spirit. Uh, Generosity of spirit does not mean if you're a leader, for example, people are doing the wrong things, then you just become generous. No, 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 no. Generosity of spirit that you act firmly, but you understand when people are having challenges to be able to help them if the need arises. So I have looked at that, and kindness is what people think kindness is weakness. No, kindness is not weakness. People think kindness it means at workplace you turn the other way. You don't tell people no, do this. Actually, you need kindness. Without kindness, people can't be excellent because you really have to push for those kind of things. But if you're kind, and it's something that I've always wondered about because my mother was such a kind person. Having suffered abuse herself in her life, she was so kind to a fault. When I was young, I used to say, "But mom, you're too kind," and stuff. She used to say, "But what do you gain by not being kind in a situation?" So leadership that understands that. And there are many examples of leaders who really have pushed for delivery, pushed for excellence, but they are not going about it in a rude way. They're not going about it in a violent way or in an aggressive way, but in a firm way, which in fact is the kindness that is required at the time. To date, I still wonder if my parents, by the time they died, they thought they had had a life of significance, a life of meaning. My father, maybe because he was a staunch Christian and he spent his time preaching and going around the country and helping people and supporting people and stuff. My mom, I'm not so sure. And I always wondered, and I wanted to ask, I said, I had an opportunity to ask them, do you think you've lived a life with purpose? Because since I was young, a purpose driven life means there is something you're here for. Okay? And because as I said, we all carry stories, which we must share and tell. We carry lessons, we carry scars, wisdom, and humanity. If you don't live a full life, if you don't live a life that impacts others, what was the point? I've always wondered, what's the point then? And I'm sorry to say it like this. Perhaps you just wasted God's time because why did he make you? Why were you created? Because I think I firmly believe you are here. You need to touch other people. You need to touch people beyond yourself. You need to have a long lasting impact on others. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, even if you see somebody who is a cleaner and you greet them that morning, you don't even know what they were going through. You just don't know what you're doing by saying hello to them. When you see people and they feel like this, so just understand that it's not about you. It's about what you bring and how you touch other people. I think if you don't do that, if you don't do even at the minimum, you don't do that, it's been a wasted life. People are scared to put themselves out there to touch others. We've been socialized over decades for different reasons to mind our business, to be in your space and stuff. Meanwhile, you might be bringing something valuable. You might be carrying a treasure with you that you're not even aware of, that you're not giving. I would like when people watch Don't Die Unknown, at the end of the day, along this journey, they realize that it is not about material, it's not about wealth, it's not about the degree, the qualification, it's about who you are as a human being. You've got something that I don't have. I have something that you don't have. And if we touch one another's lives in one way or another, we will be able to impact people positively. So don't be scared. be yourself, reach out, and live your life. You can just be helping somebody carry a bag. A lady's battling there in a shopping center, you don't know, but because you are that kind of a person, but you hold back. But by reaching out to that person, that lady who's carrying the bags will go back home and reflect and say, "Oh, that person will help me." I actually they didn't. How did they know I needed help? And so just reach out. Don't be scared. I think many people think dying unknown means to be famous, to do the big things. And no. It's even in the smallest things, in a smile, in a greeting, in a handshake, in the reaching out, in giving an ear to somebody. Don't hold back.